Hey everyone, Scott and Matty here,
Yo, bro.
and welcome to Queer as Pop, the podcast where we discuss all things queer and how they intersect with pop culture, politics, and top headlines. Matty, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty well. I've been spending most of my time today playing WoW, which is, problematic. I have an on and off relationship with that video game.
So for the uninitiated, what is WoW?
World of Warcraft, which I think everyone by now knows what that is.
Fair enough. Fair
Uh,
enough. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I may or may not be dipping my toe back into it as well, knowing that an upcoming expansion is happening. So
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I'm coming back to the game like every 2 years. I'm always telling myself I'm never gonna play it again, and then, you know,
Just
smack
draws
a
you back
bug.
in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hopeless, completely hopeless.
That's okay though. That's okay though. But so I wanted to ask you, are you a political person? Do you consider yourself like deeply entrenched in politics?
I would. I'm not particularly involved in any political party here in Sweden, but I am pretty interested in international politics. So
Okay.
I would, yeah, I find it very interesting, and I think it's like a vital part of your life that you should have some grasp on, besides being able to eat and wipe your ass.
The essentials, of course, the
Yeah,
essentials right
yeah,
there.
yeah.
But like, so I have to ask then from your perspective, do politics get as sort of glitzy and high profile in Sweden as they seem to be in the United States, where like billions of dollars are spent on these massive elections?
Not really in the same way. Generally, it's actually, I think it's illegal for Uh, it would probably be considered bribing if any political party or politician would take money from any sort of organization. So we have a completely different system here in regards to that, and we have, let's see, 7 or 8 parties in our government,
Oh my.
in the seats. So it's pretty different from the states.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
and then I guess what's like the general perception of like the generic Swedish person looking at American politics? Like, what is their typical response, or how do they typically view it?
Uh, Probably that you guys are nuts.
We
I think
are, but
yeah, I think it's perceived as overly complicated and, in some regards, not democratic enough.
okay,
A bit
okay.
unbalanced. If you look at the electoral college, for instance, that's something that's at least perceived here as very unfair.
Yeah, it can be really interesting when we had Hillary Clinton in 2016 actually win the
Yeah.
popular votes and still lost the electoral college. And so that was when we were unfortunately given 4 years of Trump.
hmm And we're gonna discuss further about that in today's podcast, which is gonna be really interesting because our guest is directly involved in American politics because we have a senator coming our way.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think everyone's gonna really enjoy this guest. So he's a queer politician from California. He's the most fascinating Senator Scott Wiener. We'll be talking to him about prison reform for trans individuals, ensuring rights for LGBTQ seniors, the environment, and so much more. So why don't you guys just stick around? Welcome back, everyone. Now, I'm really excited to introduce to you our very special guest of the day. Elected in November of 2016, Senator Scott Wiener represents the 11th District in the California State Senate. During his 4 year tenure, he has already authored over 40 bills that have been signed into law, which include issues around net neutrality, addressing climate change, criminal justice reform, and expanding rights and protections to minority groups, including the LGBTQI plus community. Before his election to the Senate, Senator Wiener served on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors and also spent 15 years practicing law both in the public and private sector. Senator Wiener, how are you feeling today?
Oh, I'm doing great. There is great, and so I'm good.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I'm still just so excited that you're able to join us today. So, um, kicking us off right off the bat, we got a little icebreaker for you just to kind of get the juices flowing. So here's my question for you. If you had to delete all but just 3 apps from your smartphone, which ones would you keep?
Oh my God, that's quite an icebreaker. um, I would I would keep Instagram, whatever the issues with Instagram and Facebook. It's a nice way to see what's going on. I'd say the New York Times, and what would my last one be? I would say the maps because I get lost sometimes, and so I need to know where I'm going.
I can imagine, yeah, with maps in particular, you're often having to struggle to find where you're going because you're traveling everywhere. But that's awesome. Yeah, I can appreciate those 3 for myself as well. Thank you for that. Okay, so before we actually roll into some of our discussion around maybe some of the legislative priorities you're looking forward to, I kind of wanted to ask a quick question for you. How did you get inspired into running for office? Like, what was really the driving force for you to feel that need to be part of public service as an elected official?
Honestly, there was nothing specific. It was really 30 years of building up, more than 30 years. No one in my family had ever been involved in politics before. Um, excuse me, sorry for my voice. Um, and when I was a teenager in the 1980s, I just started volunteering on campaigns. And I don't know why. I just started doing it. And then I came out in 1990 and got more involved both in campaigns and also in LGBTQ community work and also around HIV because it was a very scary time 30 years ago. And I thought I probably would never run for office. I thought I would just do my thing in the queer community. And when I moved to San Francisco, I decided I did not want to be involved in politics anymore. I was only going to do LGBTQ work in addition to practicing law. And after a few years, I started to know more people who were running for office, and I sort of got sucked back into campaigning again. And then over the next decade or so, I just got more and more involved, and it was a very organic process for me. Um, Being involved politically, doing my activism and organizing, and it just sort of dovetailed. And running for office was ultimately an extension of my activism. So very organic and very slow over decades.
I love that. I love that you had that sort of just slow build process where it just felt like a natural migration into politics for you. That's really interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
So oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say it's interesting because I a lot of times people come to me, especially young people, often very young, like 18, 19, 20 years old, who are like, I want to run for office. I'm going to run as soon as I can. And I always say to them, that's great. Do whatever, works for you and that's great. But I also try to advise people that I think the best candidates and the best elected officials are the ones where they didn't necessarily know if they were going to run for office and they had a life before running, whether it's, the work that they did or starting a business or a nonprofit or raising a family. And so I try to, caution people, you don't have to be in a rush to run for office. Let it happen organically.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. And I have to say, it's an honor to have you on for me as well, because I'm Swedish and I'm European. So this is a great way for me to get an insight in the political system in the US as well. So I'm very grateful that you were able to join us today.
My pleasure.
So, with that in mind, of some of the legislative priorities that are either coming up for you or have been sort of the things that you've been championing for a while, one in particular I would like to know a little bit more from you is SB 132, which is looking to protect trans incarcerated people. Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a sizable trans population in our prison system, and they are treated horribly. And and for trans people in prison, it's inherently challenging because trans people are typically automatically housed according to their birth assigned gender. So trans women will be placed and housed in a men's facility. And that can create all sorts of problems. Trans women are at very high risk of being targeted for violence, including sexual violence in prison. And there are times where trans women, in particular, I mean, trans men have challenges too, but trans women even more so. But situations where trans women will in, intentionally violate rules in order to get put into isolation for their own protection. And that, of course, is not good. It undermines, any ability to be paroled or to get credits for good time or for good behavior. And it's just bad. It's very dysfunctional. And so this legislation is about treating trans people who are incarcerated with the basic dignity and respect that they deserve. They will be allowed to determine for themselves if they want to be in a facility corresponding to their birth assigned gender, or if they want to be housed according to their gender identity, whichever they believe will be safest for them. It will also provide that they can be have the option of being searched by the gender that corresponds to their gender identity. So a trans woman would not automatically be searched by a male guard, and requiring that employees in the prison show them the basic respect of referring to them by their correct name and their correct gender in terms of pronouns. And so and there's some flexibility in the law for the prison system if there's a particular, very specific safety concern about a particular inmate. They can have some flexibility. This has been a long time priority for the community. And I'll be honest that I was really pleasantly surprised that the prison system worked with us. They told us early on they were interested in moving in that direction. They had some internal resistance, so I think they liked the fact that we were doing legislation. And we took about a year and a half working with our coalition of trans-led organizations, with prison officials, and with the governor's office. And we did prison visits where we met with trans women, trans men, and cisgender women. We also, working with prison officials, did a survey of trans people in the prison system to understand what they wanted and what their experiences were. So in the end, we came up with I think a really beautiful bill that will protect trans people who are in prison, will make their lives better and make them more safe. And we did it in a collaborative way, so it was great.
I love that. I mean, it's fascinating to see the prison system itself, the leadership within the system was so willing and excited to work with you in that capacity. Do you find that to be a common trait that as you've been as a legislator, are you having to work with the prison system from time to time? Are they typically that receptive to change?
No. And I do a lot of work, where our bills are opposed by law enforcement or opposed by prison officials. Um, and that's unfortunately not often the case. I mean, don't get me wrong, we work collaboratively with the prison system on various safety issues, healthcare access issues. Um, but, for example, right now I'm part of a coalition. We're having a huge fight with our prison system. What they're doing during COVID is when undocumented immigrants get released from prison, they facilitate transferring them to ICE. and the ICE detention facilities are horrible. Like 1 in 3 people have COVID, and it's just like a death trap. And so we've been trying to get the prison system to stop doing that, and they have refused. So normally it's more contentious, but this was definitely a very, very nice exception.
That's amazing. I that's such a heartwarming little change again with a very difficult situation. So thank you for sharing that little bit on that piece of legislation you're working on. Um, Looking to just to change directions a little bit. I know this is, maybe for you a more localized issue, but obviously this is a global issue, both, in the US, but also abroad. Wanted to know a little bit more about your interest in a California fracking ban.
Hmm. Well, I mean, climate change is it's it's the thing, right? In terms of the biggest challenge facing our planet, it's an existential threat, and if we don't get dramatically more serious with a much greater sense of urgency about not just nibbling on the edges but taking bold action, this planet is going to become increasingly unlivable, and it's going to lead to famines and wars and mass migrations and you know horrible sea level rise and more wildfires and hurricanes, etc. So we have to get real, and we have to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels. We're not doing it quickly enough. Have been very, very slow, and even in California, where we're falling behind on our carbon goals because of our land use patterns. We don't build enough housing near where the jobs are, so we do sprawl and people drive long distances. And we are a major producer of oil in California. Most people don't realize that, and so we need to, start really setting an example in California of what a progressive state, what a progressive community can do. And fracking is about 20% of our oil production, and it's beyond the climate issues. It's also very destructive in terms of how you extract the oil and gas. And so we've been wanting to ban it for a while. The politics have been just terrible, and so no one's tried for about 6 years now. And we've been thinking about it, but what really signals to us now is the time is Governor Newsom came out and announced that he wanted to see an end to fracking. So I got together with some other legislators, and we decided we were going to work as a group together, and we announced that we're going to draft a fracking ban.
That's really interesting. Now, in terms of on a national or even on a global stage, are there other states or other countries that have sort of approached this successfully or have had lessons learned that you're sort of taking with you as you're authoring this legislation or how you're, again, just talking about it in general?
Well, I mean, there are, other states and countries that have, gone out ahead of us. There are other states that have restricted or banned fracking. There are countries that have put in place plans to phase out um, the internal combustion engine in European countries. That's another thing that the governor indicated he wanted to do, and there have been legislators working on that for a while. And so, California, we're a very progressive state in many ways, but in other ways, we're not as progressive as we need to be. And on a number of climate issues, we led for a long time in California, and honestly, we've fallen behind. There are some areas where we are still very much in the lead. Like we are on track and actually ahead of schedule to make our electric grid 100% renewable. And that's something we should all be very proud of. We're literally ahead of schedule, which is awesome. We might want to accelerate the timeline even more. In fact, we should. But that's only one piece of our carbon emissions. And, we have been so addicted to sprawl development in California, which, destroys farmlands, pushes more housing in the wildfire zones, pushes people into like hour and a half, 2 hour commutes each way, which a lot of carbon emissions. And so we're not doing what we need to do. And California, of course, we're only we're 40 million people out of the entire planet, so it's not like we can dramatically affect global carbon emissions. But people look to California, and when California takes bold, decisive, forward-looking action around climate, other states often follow, and places around the world look at that too. So we need to go back into the lead on climate and set an example for the rest of the world.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know that fracking is actually a huge issue over here in Sweden as well. We've started to proceed with banning it. But going back to LGBTQ issues again, I know there was a study performed by the National Senior Citizens Law Center stating that 43% of the LGBTQ seniors had either been abused by caretakers or witnessed abusive behavior. And granted, many of these cases go undocumented, and examples of these kind of abuse are being turned away or evicted from a long-term care facility based on sexual orientation or gender identity, verbal or physical abuse by caretakers, social exclusion, and so on. Um, and I know that I think it was your first year that you authored a Senate bill to protect the elderly within our community. Could you explain for us more extensively about what this bill will mean for senior LGBTQ individuals and what your priorities were when proceeding with this bill? Because I know you had some backlash as well.
Yeah. So this actually started when I was on the Board of Supervisors back in, I think it was 2012 or 13. A group of LGBTQ senior activists came to us and said, "Hey, people are living longer in our community, and we have not grappled with the support that our elders need." And so, I think it was in 2012, we actually convened a task force of leaders in the community to come together and take, I think, 9 months it took them to come up with recommendations for legislation to protect LGBTQ seniors. And they put together a wonderful report. And so we started introducing local ordinances to implement it. And one of them was the unmet needs of our seniors, LGBTQ seniors, in long-term care facilities, particularly nursing homes, but others as well. And what we were learning was there were a lot of problems. There are seniors who have been out their entire adult lives who are forced back into the closet when they go into long-term care, or trans people who are forced to revert back to their birth assigned gender in terms of clothing that they wear or makeup, partners who are not allowed to room together, and other challenges like that. And it's really horrifying. I mean, these are our elders. These are people who created our modern community, and they deserve to be treated with respect. And so in San Francisco, and then we took it statewide in 2017 with Senate Bill 219, we created basically a Bill of Rights for LGBTQ seniors in long-term care, in terms of how they had to be referred to by the correct pronouns and names. They had the ability to say, I can't room with that person because that person is homophobic or transphobic, and so forth. A number of just protections like that, also for long-term HIV survivors. And the bill ended up passing pretty easily in the legislature, but we did get a backlash from the right wing. I think there was like a title to one article about how Granny was going to have to room with someone with a penis. Just transphobic kind of stuff. So, but we did get it passed, and it's being implemented.
That's absolutely amazing. And do you know how long it takes before this? Since I'm an outsider and don't really know how the American political system works, how long does it take for this to pass through or turn into law?
Well, it was we introduced it and passed it in 2017. So it took effect January 1st, 2018. So it's been in effect for almost 3 years now.
Yeah. So looking at the whole aspect of the politics in the US and the Trump presidency. And I was wondering what is it that what are the changes that have occurred on a both local and state level these past 4 years that have troubled you the most, and specifically regards to LGBTQIA issues? What has been going on in that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a nightmare. I was elected to the Senate the same night that Donald Trump was elected, and
Yeah.
um, it meant that for the last 4 years we've had to play defense. In addition to doing our work in California, we've had to play defense against the horrors of this administration around so many issues: healthcare, immigration, LGBTQ rights, and they go out of their way to target our community and to target the most marginalized members of our community. They've attacked trans kids. They have um, uh, they've gone after trans restroom access or trans people serving in the military.
Yeah.
They have removed uh, LGBTQ questions from senior citizen healthcare questionnaires. they, uh, they they go after us on healthcare access, trying to make it permissible for healthcare providers to refuse to serve LGBTQ people. They just go out of their way. And in addition, the judges that he's been appointing, including his current nominee to the Supreme Court, are all just horrific on our
Yeah.
issues. And so it's a very dangerous time. And I'm worried that if he really takes control of the Supreme Court with this nomination, that we're going to see the Supreme Court start to strike down civil rights laws and
Yeah.
say that they violate people's religious freedoms. So it's a scary time, and we just got to get this guy out of office. We got to take back the Senate, and then just really make fundamental change.
Yeah. Because if I've understood it correctly, the Supreme Court is more leaning conservative right now, or is going to be if the Republicans elect.
It,
Uh,
it has a conservative majority, and it has
yeah.
for quite some time. But sometimes one of the justices will cross over, and so we've been able to win some big battles over the last decade around marriage equality, around employment protections, and a few other things. But if if Amy Coney Barrett replaces Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that cements in a very solid minimum 5 vote majority, and it will be very hard to get good results out of this
Yeah.
court.
Yeah. Well, I can speak for everyone. I think in Europe, basically, that we're hoping that there will be a change in the future, because the American politics affect the rest of the world in every aspect. So I'm hoping that there will be change in the future.
Me too.
Yeah.
So, and then I had one small, then one additional question for you. I mean, how has it been as your experience being a queer politician? I mean, I know that the area that you represent is a little bit more progressive, but obviously not all of California is, and you're often working with other legislators from other areas who are far more conservative. What is have you had any like challenges again, just as a queer person, in politics?
Um, yes. It's interesting on the local level because I represent a very large LGBTQ community, um, and I, when I was on the board of supervisors and now in the Senate, and it can be very unforgiving in a way because in a place like San Francisco, which is so progressive, you're never progressive enough, and so you're always getting pushed um, from the left, which is a good thing, frankly. But it can be hard because there are members of our community, who will hold me and other queer elected officials to extremely high standard in terms of what they expect from us, and so that can be challenging. But again, it's good to be pushed. In terms of working, excuse me, in the legislature, it's been very positive. My Democratic colleagues are, overwhelmingly supportive, and I, even though I'm a very, very, left senator from San Francisco, I've been able to find issues where I can work with even my Republican colleagues as well as our more conservative Democrats, because not every issue is a partisan issue. And I've even been able to get some Republicans to support LGBTQ priorities. Like I did legislation to allow pharmacists to provide PrEP and PEP without a physician prescription to try to expand access. And there was a very right-wing Republican who early on signaled that he liked the bill a lot. And so he helped it. He brought a bunch of other Republicans on to support the bill. And it was a contentious bill. But because we had bipartisan support, we ended up just really pushing it through. And there have been other bills where we've been able to get some Republican support. So I found it to be a good environment to do LGBTQ legislating.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I have been targeted a number of times nationally by the MAGA QAnon people. So when I passed legislation in 2017 to decriminalize HIV, because California had extremely harsh penalties for people living with HIV if they had sex with someone, and and if they didn't disclose, even if they weren't infectious or the other person was on PrEP, and treating HIV much more harshly than any other serious communicable disease. And so I authored and we passed legislation to repeal those felonies. They just have been harassing me for 3 years because of that. We talked about the LGBTQ seniors and nursing homes bill, but then this year I really got targeted by QAnon because I've done a few bills now to reform our sex offender registry in California, which is badly broken and very homophobic. And so this year I did a bill to end discrimination against LGBTQ young people that simply said, let's treat them the same way the straight young people are treated. And it was a broadly supported bill. Law enforcement supported the bill, ACLU, Equality California, the Rape Crisis Center supported it. Very broad and diverse support. But the QAnon latched onto it, and it became this conspiracy thing online with lies saying that I was trying to legalize pedophilia, which was false, and that I was a pedophile. We got over 1,000 death threats. It was very, very ugly. So, when you're a gay man in particular in elected office, at some point you will be called a pedophile. It's just how this country rolls, and it's painful and horrible. But I would do it all over again, because if I'm not in this role to stick up for my community, I shouldn't be in the role.
Yeah, I remember the giant issue of all these snapshots of these Facebook posts of people vilifying you for that exact piece of legislation, and it's just so frustrating to see people reacting with such little knowledge of actually what the legislation involves and having such a bigoted point of view. So I fully can appreciate just how much you probably got flack for that one.
Well, it was, thank you, and it was like painful. It was painful for my staff too, having to deal with it. But it was interesting because there are like the super unhinged QAnon people who are just out of control. But there are a lot of people who they just see things on their timeline, like California is legalizing pedophilia, and they freak out, and they just believe what they see on their social media feeds. And that's what's really dangerous, because we got massive numbers of, comments on social media calling me a pedophile or going off on me, but also a lot of private messages ranging from death threats to, people who were just mad, to people who were just asking questions. And one of my staffers would go through all of the really crazy extreme messages and would just respond and include some information about the bill and a fact check article that was done. And a whole bunch of those people would say, you know what, I didn't know that's what this bill did. I support this bill. It makes sense to me. But people they too easily believe what they see on their social media timelines. And that is dangerous. It's what gave us Donald Trump. And it creates so many problems. And we saw it firsthand here.
Yeah, it's I can speak personally. Just the frustration I feel when I hear a family member spout off on something that they feel that they saw on social media, or even sometimes some particular media news outlets. where some top headline just kind of crosses their feed, and they're just like, well, this is what California's doing, and it's the exact opposite or completely false. And yeah, so it's just one of those things where I completely agree. Social media really does creates a lot of misinformation that defines opinions that really just shouldn't exist.
Yeah, and we worked with the social media companies, and it actually because the Instagram was the most extreme, followed by Facebook, and Twitter was very good about shutting a lot of it down early on. And ultimately, I know that Facebook and Instagram are now banning QAnon. Hopefully, they can implement that. But it's just a rough situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Scott Wiener, thank you for being here with us today. Before we go, though, we'd like to ask you a few just fun lightning round questions if you've got a few moments for us still.
Absolutely. Hopefully, I can answer
Awesome.
them.
Awesome. Okay. So here's the first question for all our fun nerd and geek fans out there. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Star Wars? Okay. Okay. Next question then. Since you mentioned that you would keep Instagram, do you Instagram your food? Are you one of those people where you see an awesome meal, you make something, and you're posting it to your feed?
No, I've done it once or twice, but that's not my thing. I like people Instagram stuff.
Okay. Okay. Next question. Who is a mentor to you?
Oh, I've been really lucky. I've had a lot of mentors over time. My predecessor in this role, Senator Mark Leno, was a mentor to me. My boss in the city attorney's office, our city attorney Dennis Herrera was a mentor to me. I have mentors in the Senate who have taught me. My colleague from across the bay, Senator Nancy Skinner from the East Bay, who's a total like kick-ass straight lady she's a gay man at heart. She's really taught me a lot. So I've been really lucky in life, and I would say also my aunt, my mother's sister, who is she's about to turn 80, or no, she just did turn 80, and she is a lesbian. She came out in the 60s when being LGBTQ was still considered a mental illness, and she stood her ground, and she came out to the rest of the family, and her partner has been a member of our family for 40 years now. And during the 1980s, she immediately got involved, like so many amazing lesbians did, to support gay men living with HIV. And then she got involved in the prison system to be they call it an AIDS buddy to people in prison with HIV. And so, like, I saw that growing up, everything she did, and it made it easier for me to come out. And I'm just always in awe of her.
Yeah. So next question: what is your most used emoji?
I think the sort of shrugging emoji where you're like,
Yeah.
I do the shrugging emoji a lot.
All right. What is your favorite superpower?
I would have to say like affecting the weather. I think that's the coolest.
All right. So
So we have
basically,
a storm fan.
yeah.
We love it.
Also,
We love it.
I want that superpower so I can like cause rain to put the wildfires out. So that's what I'm always thinking. If I just had that superpower.
Yeah.
Oh, I really wish you had that superpower right now too. All right. Well, again, Senator Wiener, thank you so much for giving us some of your time today. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with you, Maddie as well, I'm sure. With that said, everyone, if you could just hold on, we will be right back with the last bit of our pod. But as again, see you all very soon.
welcome back, guys. It's time for us to answer your questions. Scott, what do we have?
Well, I think we got a good little mix right here. The first question is from Adam, and the question is: have you ever been in a situation where you feared for your life because you are LGBTQIA plus, and how has that stayed with you to this day, if so?
I have to say no. I live in a country that's very liberal when it comes to LGBTQIA plus issues. So I've never felt that I have to fear for my life. Maybe I've been a bit reluctant to holding my partner's hand and things like that, but I've never really that's just my own problem perceptions. But never really for my life. No. How about you?
Yeah, I've never my life has never been threatened, thankfully, because someone perceived me as queer. I think that I've definitely been reluctant sometimes to make it known, especially when I was younger in life. Mainly because I was afraid of people's, reactions more on a relationship level than necessarily like a violent threat. I think that that is a privilege though that sometimes comes from being a white male, and especially in the United States, is that there's I don't know, I just feel like there's a privilege where you oftentimes get a pass when a lot of other people, especially in the BIPOC community, have a lot more that they have to be worried about because people are tending
Yeah.
to be more threatening of them.
Yeah, yeah. I absolutely. So the next question that we have going around is a pretty interesting one. Uh, I'm curious about what your opinion is on this one. Should green candy be lime or apple flavored?
Okay. So to be clear, I love both. I have a massive sweet tooth. So I will not say no to either flavor. However, I will say that lime tends to be for me the superior candy flavor simply because I feel like the apple flavor is so it tastes even more fake than what the fake lime flavor is in candy, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah,
I love the lime flavor more. What about you?
it's the exact same answer. So we're not going to have a fight about this one. And I put lime in everything, in my food, in chicken, in savory dishes, in my water. I am obsessed with lime. So I totally agree with you.
Okay, okay. So then our last question comes from Christina and says, would you rather donate your body to science or your organs to people who need them?
Um, I would probably donate my organs to people who need them because I feel in the moment, in that specific moment in time, if you want to save someone's life, I, I'd rather have that as my legacy than being like poked on for eternity by a set of scientists.
Fair enough, fair enough. So this is where you and I will differ. I think I would be playing more the long game, and I think that by donating my organs to science, I can potentially save even more lives through the use of the organ tissue in my body because they're able to find, therapies or medicines that could help a broader set of people than just one person. But I definitely
Yeah,
appreciate where you're coming from because it's really hard to say to somebody, haha, I'm not going to give you my heart because it's going to science instead. I mean, that's pretty cold, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's one of those things where I just think that for the longer term, I would want my organs if I had to choose to go to science
yeah,
instead.
yeah. This is a really difficult question morally. So yeah, I can understand both perspectives in their own way. So we're gonna head over to our, or probably my favorite segment of the podcast, which is torturing Scott by trying to teach him Swedish. So
So excited.
yeah, so we're gonna have the Swedish word of the day, and today it's a legal court in Swedish, which is domstol.
Okay, so Doomstol.
Yes.
Did I get it all correct? I mean, was it pretty bad there?
No, you're getting better. Your Swedish is definitely getting better. So I'm pretty
Okay.
sure by the end of the year you'll be completely fluent.
So when I after our revelry of binge drinking while I'm visiting on vodka, I will be finding myself in a Doomstol because of probably some things I didn't remember that I did, but some police officer picked me up for. Is that about right?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
I'm sure that's gonna happen.
You
Um,
know, I mean, I like to live large, so let's just, hit for the fences and just and assume it's going to be something chaotic like that.
yeah, absolutely. You only live once, right?
Exactly.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening today. If you guys want to know more about us and when our episodes are getting launched, you can find us at Twitter at QueerAsPop. You can find me at Novakaza on Twitter, and you can find Scott at the Kilcannon. Scott also is also a streamer on Twitch, so you can find his streaming under the username Kilcannon, and he has a great and lovely community for you to join if you'd like to. Thank you so much for listening this week, and bye bye.